Everyone. So we'll start my today's talk, but before that, we'll do a quick task where all of you will have a 5-second timer to imagine a chair. It can be anything. You have complete freedom to imagine any chair you want. So here's your timer. Now the question is, did you think something similar to this? Something having 4 legs, something maybe made out of wood, something having a backrest? Was it something closer to this, or was it something closer to, let's say, this? So now coming to the topic of the day, it's free will of a designer. Talking about the notion of free will from the point of view of a designer as they're making their creative decisions in their projects. So we need to take a look at the brief history of the philosophy of the free will. It has been going on for thousands of years, and fundamentally the question is, do you have free will or not? And there have been two questions so far, two answers so far, yes and no. So first, there were hard determinists who argued that everything in our world happens on causality. One event leads to one event only, and it cannot lead to anything else. So everything happens in a chain of reaction. So they say no one has free will then. Whereas libertarians argue there are actually two answers to this. We can divide, there are some things are free, some things are not free. So they say real world events, which they call event causation, like hard determinists, happen on causality, on chain reaction. Whereas when something is caused by any agent with a mind, we call them free because the decision originated from their mind and not from a physical event beforehand. And one of the stronger arguments libertarians have that hard determinists couldn't argue is, if we're not free, then why do all of us collectively feel free when we're making decisions? And then hard determinists also argue that we can say our mental state or our mind processes are directly correlated with the biological organ of our brain, which is a part of our biological system, which is in turn part of our physical world. So all of that happens on causality. Then why doesn't this? Where is the line? So and they further argue you can divide and explain your mental state primarily on the 3 tangents of your beliefs, your desires, and your temperaments, and these make you act in whatever way you act. So if you completely understand these, you can understand the way in which a person will decide. Now this question is going on for centuries. So why do we need to find an answer to this? So fundamentally, humans are social beings. We need to judge other people on their work. We either need to reward them for something good they did, or we need to punish them for something bad they did. For that, we need to determine whether or not actually someone is responsible for an action they took. And for them to be responsible, it has to be their decision. We can't say it's not their decision. How can I reward someone for it? So now comes the new school of thought, which is soft determinism, which instead of answering yes and no for this and that, they say, well, kind of both. And they're like, yeah, libertarians had it right about event causation and agent causation. Event causation is causality. Whereas when someone's driving a decision, when it's affected by the internal factors of a person, their growing up, their upbringing, or whatever, but a decision is affected by the person who the person is, then it's determined to be free. But now the question is, how can we actually say for sure a person is determining an action and it's not actually external factors still playing in? It's just complex that we don't see. So in comes modern philosophers and modern thinkers like Patricia Churchland, who actually tries to bridge a gap between these two schools of thought. So is it external or is it internal? She's like, well, it's kind of both. It's never just one. It's just about the degree of more internal or more external. So instead of asking the question, am I free? We should ask, how much control do I have over a decision? And the more internal factors play in a decision, the more control you feel and the more responsible you are. And it is the sense of control which makes us all feel free. So as designers, what we need to now do is figure out ways so that the internal factors have the maximum input on our decisions than the external factors. Then we can be free. We can originate ideas from our own minds. A quick example of what external factor will be, if we ask, to visualize a princess, and we imagine someone in a pretty gown in a tall castle. Maybe we are influenced by Disney movies because we've seen in every Disney movie a princess lives like that. Whereas internal factors, the science is still not rigid on it. It's actually very complex. No one really knows actually how our mind makes new connections or how it connects the dots. But it's so complex that a few tricks are to actually simulate the complexity. We can simulate a complex change of thoughts using various tricks, and one such trick is Shirotori by Shinpei Takahashi. He suggests, like, pick up any random word, using the last letter, think of another word, and then repeat it once more. So now you have this set of 3 words, and this will force your brain to have a chain of thought. You're connecting Bullet to Tarantula to Atlantis. You're thinking of something. Your brain will start firing up, making new connections, and you repeat this. So no matter what your project is, you're designing toys, you're designing cars, or whatever. Just do this enough times. You will once find a pair which hits you, which will start a new chain of thought, which is new and original to you, and you're free. So what's actually happening when you're doing it is juxtaposition of very seemingly random ideas, but it's forcing your brain to make complex connections and simulate those internal factors. So summing up today's talk is you need to avoid your brain from working on autopilot. Using external factors, our brain is actually very competent at just doing things on default. You need to actually put in efforts to fight those default answers and assumptions, and encourage your internal factors so that you can make new connections and be free. So that was all. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me.